Hello and very welcome to another episode of Arch Linux versus the Linux Noob. And in today's video, I'm not going to do any tutorials. I am just going to talk about why did I do what I did and what's the point. So if you can read very fast, you can just read through all these notes that you can see on the screen. I hopefully won't deviate from that. So just read it and stop the video. You don't have to watch everything as I ramble on needlessly on all these points. So, why did I install Linux in the virtual machine and why do I care about moving it to USB stick? So, basically I have a desktop computer and although it's not the most beefy hardware that you can get, it's a decent computer, and I think you can get a small virtual disk and a virtual machine running on any a modern PC. At least, if we are talking about Arch Linux, you can, make your install in a way that it will run on the virtual machine on your PC. So we are not talking about some of these big Linux YouTubers who have like these 3 monitor setups and I don't know 8 core CPUs and I don't know 64 gigs of RAM, and they can basically run 5 full-featured virtual machines parallel. If you are just a regular guy who is interested in Linux, you can fire up a VM and you can experiment in that. And the problem is, of course, that this experience won't be as smooth as it would be running on a real metal, unless you have those very beefy PCs. So that's why the USB part is that if you have a USB 3 port and, well, I should write USB 3.1 preferably. Some of the USB sticks, especially the bigger ones like 64 gigabytes USB sticks, come in USB 3.1. And your computer probably has a USB 3.1, so you can get very good performance. You will get almost as fast as you would get if you installed it on the hard disk, except for, of course, loading times and reading write file read write times. But you can try out a lot of things booting from the USB drive. You don't need to wipe your hard disk just to try out Linux. So why don't I just directly install the USB drive though? Because speed-wise, it looks like a better option than running it in a virtual machine. So, well, installing directly on the USB drive, I don't think it's a good idea, because then it means that you do all the experimenting on the same USB drive, and the lifetime of these solid-state drives is defined by how many times you write on them. So if you are experimenting a lot, your USB drive can die very fast, and they basically stop working without any prior notice to you. So once you will just realize that, oh, my USB stick is not working anymore. Do I have any backup of my data? Well, if you are just experimenting with this, probably not. So you can start again. And of course, the inconvenience of needing 2 USB sticks. You need one USB stick in your computer to boot from. This will contain the live image, and the other that you install your system on. So this is something actually that you can do with almost any Linux distribution. So you just, let's say, burn your USB stick with the live environment ISO, and you can install from that to the other USB stick in Arch Linux, because you do everything in a command line and you probably know what you are doing, or you have a very good idea about what you are doing. You can do more extreme things like this, moving from the VM to the USB stick, or installing it to a USB stick in a virtual machine, stuff like that, very easily. But any distribution, you can do it with the 2 USB sticks if you have 2 spare USB sticks for this purpose, or you don't mind wasting some money on that thing. Okay, and of course there is one thing: if you are can get confused and accidentally format the hard disk in your computer instead of the other USB drive. Well, so some people on the YouTube sphere suggest that you physically remove, or at least pull out, plug off, I don't know, pull out the cords, the cables from your computer's real hard drive, so that you are 100% sure that you don't mess up your existing install by doing this. So if you install it on the VM or copying from the VM to the USB stick, you don't have to worry about these things. Okay, so advantages of installing in the VM first is that you can at all the times leave other programs running in your host operating system, like a web browser, in which you can watch tutorials, you can read the ArchWiki, you can search the forums. So for every step you can use the same computer at your convenience during the install process, and which is, for a newbie, I think is a very good place to start. If you are installing it any other way, so not in the VM, then you have to have another computer or a tablet or a phone with a big screen that you can use for these purposes, and that can be quite time consuming, as you're like trying to type on the small keyboard and stuff like that, and you have to turn to the other screen and do your stuff there, stuff like that. So it's better to install it on a VM. And of course the virtualized hardware that the virtual machines like the VirtualBox is offering us, those are quite standard, and a lot of people already did install Arch Linux in Oracle VirtualBox or other virtual machines. So you will definitely find solutions for hardware or like this virtualized hardware related problems. You don't need to mess around these things first. You can jump right into testing out the user experience. Of course, it is very easy to clone the virtual machine. As you can see, I have clones here. You can just right click and clone anything, so you don't need to worry about backups. You can just clone your virtual machine and try out any insane thing that you just want. You can try out like literally removing, deleting some important folders, and then you can try booting into the live environment and trying to restore your system from that. You can try a lot of things without doing any irrevocable damage, because you can always just use the cloned virtual machine after that. And of course, why it is also very good, because it gives you a very good opportunity to experiment, and not just doing these crazy experiments, but installing 1,000 software to find out which one you would like to use. So if you are a Windows or a Mac user trying to move towards Linux, it's quite likely that you are using at least a few software that is Windows only or Mac only, and you need to find an alternative on Linux for that. So I try to use free and open source software even on Windows as much as I can, because it's free and open source. And of course those are cross-platform. So for example, I'm using, for recording the screen, I use the OBS, which is great software. I use Blender, I use Audacity, which are available on Linux too, so I don't need to worry about that. But for example, I use the Microsoft Office suite, and so I need to figure out if LibreOffice is the one that I want to use, or I want to try another Office suite. Or for music, I need to find an open source music player, because I am still using Winamp, which is, I know it's weird. And something like that. It's very easy to just fire up the virtual machine and try these things there. Of course, this will be much slower, so you cannot really get like a really user experience with those things, but at least you can see how it looks. You can get some feel of the UI. You can decide whether you can do everything that you need to do with those software. and that's better to do in the virtual environment where you can just clone your drive and revert the changes anytime without any hassle of you can do it of course on real hardware. There are very good backup tools, but I think this cloning and just going with the clone VM is basically the easiest way you can do that. And so last point here is that what is the advantage of copying the system to the USB drive after the VM? So why don't we just try to, maybe get a second SSD, or maybe you are running your computer on Windows and you want to move to the Linux, and now you did everything in the virtual machine, you figured out everything. Why don't you just destroy Windows and install Arch on it, Arch on your computer? So I think it's very easy to do all this. Just copy the finished system that you already set up in the VM for yourself, so you have like something to, you don't need to start again. Maybe you want to start again, that's of course also a possibility, but you have all the software you've selected for yourself, you wanted to try, you want to use in the future, and you can just copy it to the USB and boot up the USB, see if you have any hardware issues, for example. You don't need to destroy your operating system, and you can still figure out if things work as expected, like your graphics card, your sound card. Can you use your webcam? Can you use your USB microphone? Anything like that. And you can troubleshoot these problems before getting rid of your operating system that you have. So that's one of the advantages of just copying the system from the VM to the USB. And then of course you can keep this USB drive, and you can set up like a default install that has all the programs installed that you would like to use. Is set up the user environment the way you like it, and basically just maybe twice a week boot the USB up, or just root into it from your Arch install from your computer, and just do a pacman SYU to refresh all the software, keep it up to date, and then anytime you need a new computer to install the system on, you can just use your USB stick instead of a live environment and just copy everything to the computer, and then you will have the basic system that you are used to without much hassle. So this was today's video. I managed to talk 13 minutes about these few points that you can see here on the screen, so I guess I rambled on long enough, and well, I hope to see you in the next video, which will either be another rant video or maybe I will do some tutorials. It depends on how much time will I have and how much things I can experiment with to show you until that. So until then, I will see you next time. Bye bye, I guess. Bye bye.